everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Diane. I've been a software consultant here with Solution Suite for 5 years now, and I've been doing software development for, it's a milestone, for a decade now for me, so it's pretty big. So today I'm going to talk about, the title of my talk is Beyond Clean Code. This talk is inspired by the book Clean Code by Robert C. Martin, or Uncle Bob. Uncle Bob is one of the authors of the Agile Manifesto. He's also written a lot of software development books, best practices, techniques, and whatnot. He's also doing some videos of the tips that he does. So, and yeah, Clean Code is one of them. And from the people who I've heard about this book from, they say that once you read this book, you know, that differentiates you from any normal software developer to like a developer who's like more professional, who writes clean code, and we'll talk about what clean code means here. Also, a little disclaimer here about this book. This book is written in Java, so all the code examples in this book is Java, but definitely all the concepts that he's trying to teach people is, you know, applicable to any programming language. Oh, let me just go back a little bit. I'm just going to show the subtitle of the book is called A Handbook of Agile Software Craftsmanship. So can anybody describe, tell me what a craftsman is? Just off the top of your head, what do you think this being a craftsman is? Say what? Okay, yeah. Very, very well. I like that. Yes, yes. And that's a good description. That's like more generic, and that obviously applies to like even in software development. If you call yourself a software craftsman, that's like you're an expert, you're skilled in that craft. But like a little more, a lower level description of it is someone who creates something with his hands, a woodwork, jewelry. Anything, you know, like you go to a craft store and you make yarn or whatever, you know, anything that you make with your hands, and you put your time and effort to learn your craft, and then you make something beautiful out of it. So if you apply that to software a software craftsman is someone who has a strong set of technical disciplines and practices, and these are the people who take the software industry to the next level. It's promoting technical excellence, and it's the end of thinking like software development is like a factory worker's job, like it's a production line. No, we are software craftsmen, and in this book, Uncle Bob wants to raise the bar. We're not just code, sweatshop, whatever. No, we're not that. We are experts. We are we are different from normal developer. Yeah. We as professional, as software craftsmen are different from just someone who codes. So let's talk about what clean code is. In this book, Uncle Bob asked a few people what clean code is, because clean is like subjective. Like, what do you mean by clean code? So he asked a few people, very, very famous people. So one of them is, I don't know how to properly pronounce their names, but Grady Bush, I don't know, who developed the Unified Modeling Language, UML. Another one is Bjorn Sturstrup, who really just developed and created the C++ programming language. And so he asked these people, including Diane, no, I'm kidding. And in summary, these are what he described clean code is. Clean code is simple. It is clear. You can tell from looking at a code that is clean that clarity is king. That the intent is very clear. It's readable. It's maintainable. And most of all, it's written by someone who cares. And if you didn't catch that, you know, typos is very typical in a job. I know how to do this. I know how to write this. You already thought for loops you're going to write at the end of your code, and you just type so fast. And all these like mini typos that you have, it's like That is someone who's just like, just typing all the way. He doesn't care about his code. We have seats, by the way, here. And chair over there, feel free to, so yeah, I'm not bothered. So, so, yeah. So think about when you type just so fast, and I know we know that you know what you want to type in your code, but just take your time, not too slow, I guess, but just really care for your code. So why do we even care? Why do we care that we have to write clean code? Well, there's no such thing as a write once code. There's always going to be enhancements, bugs, performance improvements. You know, so it is good that the first time that you write your code, you make sure that you give it your best clean code already. Because even though you think, I'm going to write this utility, I'm never going back to this again, you'll come back to it. You'll have enhancements, more feature to it. You'll add more this and that. And then you come back to it and you're like, I wrote this and I don't really remember what this block of code does. So, you know, that tells us something. So, let's talk about how. How can we write clean codes? Okay, and also I'm going to give you a little bit of a quiz at the end. So I want you to pay attention, and at the end of my talk, if we have time, hopefully, if there's anything that I didn't mention in my talk, feel free to let's have brainstorming at the end. So, okay, let's talk about naming first. Uncle Bob, in his book, he was like, you know, when you have a kid, you're not going to name your kid just terrible names, right? You know, this person is going to grow up with a bad name. So you want to care. You want to choose your name carefully. So, and that's the same with code. Your variable names, your function names, class names. You got to name them properly. So, what are those kinds of clean code naming? So let's talk about intentional naming. Here, the first bullet is int d, semicolon. And then you have a comment that says, d means the elapsed time in days. Like, why can't you just name your variable elapsed time in days? Make it more clear. Wherever that variable is called, you know that it is the elapsed time in days, not only on the definition of that variable. Pronounceable names. Private date, you're not a robot. Private date, modification timestamp. No. Searchable names. Here, 52 is replaced with a constant. What does 52 mean? And you're looking at your code. I forgot what this is. It means weeks in year. And for example, you have a big code base, and I really need to find out what it for does or whatever. It helps if you use it's not just a magic number of 52. You can search for weeks in year very easily. So that's naming. And by the way, these tips that I'm going to present today, these are just some of them. Obviously, just not everything from the book. So yeah, let's talk about functions next. Functions are small. They do one thing, and they do it well. And a tip from Uncle Bob in his book, he said we should only use one word per concept for consistency. For example, you want to use get name. You don't want to have another function that says grab salary. Use get as well. Your concept is to get something, then use get all the way in the entire code base. Grab, determine, calculate, compute. Which one? Just use one. As long as you're consistent. There's no it should be get all the time. No, as long as it's consistent in your entire code base. And they should have no side effects, or also called now pure functions. Either do something or they answer something, which is like is sorted, or or that sort. It does one thing. It's not do sort and then do sort and is check something. Is it empty? We should only do one thing and never both. So let's look at some examples of functions. And this one's a little different from what I described. So let's look at this one. There's a switch statement that checks for record type, and then each case is PPO, or HDHP, some insurance-related stuff, and then you compute for the deduction. We should, remember about the object-oriented principles that we learned. So polymorphism, it avoids using switch statements. You can just have one parent class and call it health insurance types, and they all have different implementation of get deduction, so that they're all in separate classes. You don't have like a big if-else or switch statements of all the different ways to compute for the deduction. Let's talk about flag arguments or Boolean arguments. So in this example, so in the function render, you pass true. And then, if you're using Sublime, or I guess, Sublime, or not like the very rich IDE that you're using, you don't have that option to peek for the definition or look at the JS doc or Java doc of it. So what is true again? What is the first parameter again? What does the parameter mean? And especially if it's not a variable, it's just true or false, you don't know what true means. So they advise us to just use render for suite or render for test method, just separate all the different ways that you can render where the true or false matter. Another example is this component.setHidden, and this happens to us a lot of times. You're reading some code and like, I'm setting it to hidden, and I see the code. I don't know why it's still showing up. You don't realize, oh wait, I passed false. Set hidden to false. Set, I don't know, locked to false, and then you're like, oh, doesn't, maybe you just do hide or show, lock or unlock, rather than set hidden and then toggle true or false. Okay, so those are all for code. Now let's talk about comments. What do you think? Doesn't match, right? So comments lie. If the code is unclear, just rewrite it. Don't use code to make up, don't use comments to make up for bad code. Obviously, here in this example, that's not obviously Dasmati rice. The only source of truth is the code, the one that's executing. The source of truth is not in the comments. This block of code does this and that, this and that. Eventually, someone will improve the code and forget about the comments. So the comment doesn't match the code anymore. So we got to remember that comments lie. Well, I kind of added may lie. For me, I try to make sure that my comments are really good, and so I give it a benefit of the doubt. Like maybe it's true, maybe it's not. So it's not always not true. So I added may there. So let's look at some examples of what good and bad comments are. Legal comments, copyright, all rights reserved. Those are okay to be in your code. Intent. Say you have a pattern matcher. What does this date formatter look like? MMUD and 4Ys or different formats of dates. Those are okay, because especially if you have a regex, you don't really know what does this match again. Those are okay. Warnings, especially if there's an impact that is not very obvious in that code. Do a shallow copy, or else, or if not, this is going to happen on this other class or whatnot. Something that is not clear when you just look at the block of code. To-dos are okay, especially if you're like, yeah, this is going to go away on the 2.0 release. Those are okay. Those are good comments to be in your file. Let's look at some bad comments. Journaling comments. Someone laughed. Oh, I do that. Oops. On this date, and then I write my initials, and then I added this tax calculation somewhere. We have version control for that. We have source control. And we don't really need to add a date on the source file. So no need to write, today, I really hated it that this had to happen. Like, not in the code. Redundant comments. Private int, background process delay, and the description is the background process delay. Like, what? It's the same thing. And it just makes noise in your code. Like, it's the same thing. You don't really need to, like, unless you have a better description of what it really means and how it's used and whatnot, you don't need something like that. Get name, function gets the name. No need. Position markers. I've worked in teams where they put all their private functions at the bottom, all their public functions at the top, or all their event listeners somewhere, like, or they arrange in alphabetic order or whatnot, and then they put like position markers. This is where the listeners are. This is where public functions, protected functions are. These markers are not needed. You can see them on the JS doc or Java doc at public, at private. You can see it on the function itself. There's no need to like add noise and unnecessary comments in your code. And then I don't have an example for this, but obviously commented out code, we don't need those. Just remove them from the file. Again, same as the first bullet, we have version control for that. You can always go back and if you think you really need that code, just look at version control. Now let's talk about formatting. Vertical openness between concepts. What does that mean? Each blank line is a visual cue that identifies a separate concept. I don't want you to see it. Just look at it from afar. Maybe it's not the best. Maybe it's not the best example that I have. But just look at it from afar. You're reading it. You're reading it, and and to me, they're a little squished. They're squished, and especially if you're not, well, most of IDs right now have color coding and whatnot. But if you don't have those, you're going to have to read each line like, oh, okay, the for loop ends on line 31. And then another concept starts, okay, now it starts computing on line 32. And then it ends on line 35. You have to go through all the lines. When they're separated like this, each concept, you know, tells you can just read like one line, like, oh yeah, I don't need to read the rest of that. I don't need to know. Like, I know that this is the for loop. I know this is the computation for this. I know that this is that. You know, separate them. And gone are the days when you want to, like, you know, squish them in all one line, you know, make the file size as small as possible. No, I think it's 2019 now. We have so much memory, and, you know, we have minification. Just make your code readable. No need to, like, squish it because you want to save space. Like, no. Add blank lines, make it readable for people. Let's discuss more about vertical distance. Variables should be declared as close to their usage. So I remember when I was still learning to code, especially, and this is just about like variables within a function. It's not about like global variables. You know, those are definitely a different thing. But in a function, I remember like put all the variable definition at the top of the function, and then use them at the somewhere else, wherever in the function. And they're just like, where is this defined? Especially if the programming language is JavaScript. You're like, oh, what is this variable again? Is it int? Is it a string? Is it, you know, what is it? And if the definition is very far, it's like all the way at the top, and you use it at the very bottom of the function, you know, you don't know the data type or whatever it is, just use it near where you first use it in your function. Another vertical distance concept is dependent functions. If function calls another, they should be vertically close, where the caller is above the called. Example of this are public functions. You know, when public functions, when it calls like different private functions, usually it's a good advice. Of course, it's not always, you know, there's factors about it. But if you can, put the private functions right below it. So you're reading it like blah, 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 compute for salary. You don't really need to know. Maybe sometimes you don't need to know. No. You want to know how salary is computed, and just go to the next function. You see it immediately there, especially if it's private, and then go back, okay, continue reading that public function and whatnot. So it helps if the functions themselves are close to one another. Let's talk about horizontal alignment. I'm doing this. So let's look at this. Yeah. So Have you seen code where you define your variable names with them, what do you call this? Accessors, I forgot. Accessor, I forgot something accessor, private, protected, and then data type, string, int, and then, I forgot to mention, accessor, and then tab, the data type, tab, the variable name. And so, to be honest, I looked at it first and I'm like, wow, this looks very clean. Like, there's so much white space. I can easily see all the file name, the variable names. I can see the data types for themselves and then the accessors. And as I was reading this book, it makes sense. And it does happen to me. It happened to me where you're using the variable name, but you completely ignored the data type of it. The purpose of these definitions, they should be read from left to right. Is it private? Is it string? And then what is the variable name? Or protected, and then age. Especially in Java documentation or JS doc, we sometimes forget to read it from left to right. They should not be separated like that, just so they're in the same line. And another thing that I remembered when I was working on a project that has this kind of format, whenever you add a new variable name or a new data type, Boolean that's longer than string, you have to adjust everything else because now you want them all to be aligned. That is really necessary, but at the same time, I'm saying this because, and at the end, I'm also gonna expand this more, but it really depends on your team's decision. If your team says, as long as you discuss it with your team and you say why you need to do that, then you follow the format of the team. So, and we'll get to that later. So the better way of writing this is just, let them find they're not aligned, but you have to read it from left to right because you want to know the data type and whatnot. So, a reminder from Uncle Bob, the Boy Scout rule: always leave the campground cleaner than you found it. Upon reading this book, Uncle Bob doesn't expect anyone to just look at the code base and then just rewrite everything, refactor. Oh, I know how to write this properly, whatnot. No, start with something small. We don't expect you, a Boy Scout, to just clean the entire campground. Just start with something small, throw away a cup. Especially if you're not very familiar with that file, or you're not really sure, you haven't written any unit tests, so you're not sure about modifying this function right there. Start with something small and then eventually make it cleaner and cleaner than you first found that code base. So those are like the basic code, basic of clean code. Now let's talk about the main title of my talk, which is Beyond Clean Code. So, there's this talk at the Rails conference in Kansas City in 2016, where Nadia Oduneo had a talk titled "The Guest: A Guide to Code Hospitality," and I really like that name, Code Hospitality. And she compared clean code to reading code to having someone read your code is like having someone navigate around your city. So it's like you have a friend, oh, I'm going to visit Washington, D.C., or in her talk, it was London. Hey, I'm going to go to Washington, D.C. Where are all the good food places are? Where are all the historical monuments are? Point me, what is the best route from here to here, whatnot? And you, being a local here, know, all the ins and outs of Washington, D.C. And she describes it as with the code base. A new team member joins her team, and they look at it, and I'm like, I'm lost. I can't find where this happens. I can't navigate my way through this code base, And so she's trying to make us remember that clean code base is like helping a friend, a stranger, navigate around your town. Help them find where your utility helpers are. Help them find where your models are, or even in a single class, help them through your code. You're able to help them navigate around your code base, which is your city. And similar to that, there's another talk by Sarah May, and this one is from the Rails conference in 2017. And the title of her talk is "Livable Code: Embrace the Practical Mess." And in this talk, she had an analogy of a clean code, messy code, with a hoarder's house and a staged house. So this is what a hoarder's house look like, right? Like, you can't find what you need. You can't navigate yourself, and you don't know why there's a banana in, I don't know, your freezer or something. Like, why is this here? And I liked it when I heard about this stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's true. Like, I would read code and like, why is this here? Like, it doesn't make sense that this is here. Just like, and that actually also reminded me of this game that I used to like to play a lot. You know, this mystery hidden object game, and you're like, look for, this one is like, there's a bagel on the floor. There's a fish on the top of the shelf. And I'm like, why are these things here? And it doesn't make sense. And that reminds me of what spaghetti code is, like dirty, messy code. Like, you can't live in that kind of house. And at the other end of the spectrum, there is also the staged house. You know, like, oh, that's so clean. I got to make sure my code is really clean. You know, I've got to whip whoever's going to push a pull request that's like not following these best practices and whatnot. And then you look at it, it's like, it's too clean. Like, who lives in this kind of house? You know, it doesn't look like someone lives in this kind of house. And so Uncle Bob, having heard about this talk, he was also trying to he has an article about it, like, yeah, I wrote this book without the intention of anyone to be like, yeah, it has to be clean code like this much. No, he wants us to be like in the middle, if possible, because sometimes you just can't help, like, I really don't know where to put this helper. I'm just gonna put it right here and get done with it and move on and whatnot. And that's just life. You have deadlines and whatnot. Although you should try your best to not use those as an excuse, definitely try to keep them as organized as you can. And you know, this is a little a little bit too more of a little messy, but it's livable. I think I'd live in this kind of house. You see, there's still some organization to it. The books are on one side. There's frames on the shelf and whatnot. And sure, it's not a staged house. Sure, it's not a model house that's like, oh wow, but you can tell that someone lives here. And we want to be developers who can live in our code base. We're not, we are people, and we're not robots who follow these rules so well that we can't do anything anymore, right? We have to be able to live there. And in connection to the previous talk, live there, because you treat yourself as like a family in one house, I guess, and you live in that code. And then, as I said in the previous talk, being there's a possibility that there's a new team member that will come, help them navigate around your house, or because it's the same thing if you're new project, you're going to look at the codes like, I don't want this. And so, do what is our golden rules? Do unto others what you want others to do unto you. So it's the same for development, writing code as well. And as I mentioned sometime in my talk, if you belong to a team, the team wins. I'm sure all of us have our own style, and I really want this kind of formatting. I really want that. It's just for me. It's just really clean. If they're all in this area, they're all at the bottom or whatnot, that's fine. But if once you're in a team, the team wins. Who here belongs to a team? I think, okay, very very few. Like I didn't think. If you belong to a team, then whatever consensus is of the team, as long as you talk them out, you explain your side, they explain your side, good, healthy conflicts, and then you talk about it. Then you decide what is best for your team. And together you can write clean code, and not just you make your changes, clean up, and then this person changes it and then cleans it up his own way. no, that's just not going to work. So, yeah, that is the end of my presentation. So that's very fast. So like I mentioned somewhere in my talk, I want to like make it like a brainstorming session. Does anybody have any thoughts of any other clean code, writing clean code ideas? So anyone want to volunteer? Let me do that just for, no, let's just do that. Okay, yes, Joel.
It would be really popular to have coding standards on a project. Just don't see that as often. This whole clause say about coding standards. What are your thoughts? Should your project have coding standards across the entire project, team levels? Not worth it.
Gotcha. I think there should be project-wide standards in your code, but at the same time, sure, especially if it's like a big project and you're just really maybe your code between your sub teams just don't really touch each other. They just really have different different modules, very little integration between the two. Sure, you can have like an even smaller standards within your team. It's good to read up the entire code base and just have like everyone follows the same standards for the entire project. I think that's what I would recommend. Yes.
Writing methods with single responsibility.
Yes.
So these are just change.
Yes. Agreed. Solid principles. Yes, Jeff.
Yeah, so I think it's important also to know idioms of the language you're using. So being idiomatic to you're writing Ruby or JavaScript or Java. What does a typical Java developer, Ruby developer, JavaScript developer expect when they look at the code in terms of somewhat like variable naming conventions, function naming conventions, how functions are written. There's lots of different ways to write things in different languages. But usually after a while, the community, greater sort of development has decided upon these, for lack of better word, standards of how to use
Mm-hmm.
So it would be different from Ruby, JavaScript, Java, but within the language standards.
Mm-hmm.
Know those and use those. It's less, I would just say, jarring when a new developer might look at your code. If they're a Java developer and they look at your code and it's still idiomatic Java or idiomatic JavaScript or Ruby, it's easier introduction to the code base following those sort of established patterns.
Can you give an example, like
so I think, I'm trying to remember like Ruby, but in Ruby versus yeah, like in Ruby for variable names Ruby we use underscores.
Gotcha.
But, you know, in JavaScript that's not
PHP, dollar sign.
A lot of good amount of it is naming. Ruby tends to be much more accepting of kind of what we talked about, where it's one big long line of code. Like people that are Rubyists tend to try to do things as concise as possible, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas languages are not. It's more of the I can write things out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that kind of stuff. And if you just Google like idiomatic Ruby or idiomatic JavaScript, you'll find a bunch of things.
That's good advice. That reminds me also, idioms. There's also another word for that. In relation to business requirements, it helps if you name your code as how the requirements or their users use it. For example, I can think of a good one, but like maybe salary versus pay. You know, your users would use salary more. So when you communicate with your business people, your business analysts, even your QE, you know, it's easy you're talking about the same thing. You're talking about salary and not, to me, it's pay. You know, no, it should be, you know, requirements and code as well. So yeah, that's a good point.
That gets very difficult though. Lifespan of the application.
That's true. I mean, eventually they change it.
Or they'll change it. Now they want something shown in UI. Now you've got a ton of code. I mean, you've got a ton of code in the back end that's named one way, but in all the users and user community things, there's another term. Some certain extent.
That's true.
It's very hard to manage that.
Yeah. Yeah. At some point, maybe like a comment on that file, maybe like, oh, this means also this. This was changed when we migrated. I don't know, something like that, I think. Any other suggestions? Yes.
number of lines,
Mm-hmm.
maybe organize or fold or structure,
Mm-hmm.
and then the use of abstraction, overuse of abstraction.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Anybody else? No? Okay, good. I guess if anybody wants any other ideas at the end of this talk, feel free to, like, maybe we can write a conversation, and let's have something company-wide, not necessarily just ideas that we can share to our own individual project teams if we talk about it here in Solution Street more. So that's it. Thank you, everybody.
Hey, can you put the conversation and code it on member network and put the link to the book?
1 second. I stopped.